Welcome to the Community Difference Makers podcast. Before we jump into this final episode on food insecurity, we want to note that just days after we recorded this conversation, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds announced that Iowa will participate in the federal summer EBT program called Sunbucks for the summer of 2026, after opting out and running its own Healthy Kids Iowa program in 2025. Throughout the conversation, I believe you'll hear that our guests will be encouraged by this change and feel it will help provide more access to kids who need food resources in the summer. Let's take a listen. Hello, and welcome to Community Difference Makers, brought to you by Bankers Trust and United Way of Central Iowa. I'm your host, Emily Abbas, and this season we're taking a deeper look at some of Central Iowa's most critical community issues. And as you know, we've been talking a lot recently about food insecurity. Today is our final episode on this topic, and today we'll be focusing on how food insecurity affects kids, especially during times when school isn't in session. Joining me are three wonderful guests: Dave Stone from United Way of Central Iowa, Lyn Wilson with Des Moines Public Schools, and Melissa Stimple from Waypoint Resources. Thank you all for being here. Lyn, we're going to start with you. I think I told you before we started recording, I'm a proud student of Des Moines Public Schools, and my kids all went there as well, so thank you for representing public schools in our community. Many listeners may not realize that beyond federally funded school meal programs, DMPS also operates food pantries in several school buildings. Can you talk about how these school-based pantries work and why they've become so important?
Sure. The school-based pantries work. We have a partnership with the Food Bank of Iowa, so it's a very robust partnership. We have food pantries in almost all of our schools, including preschools, special programs, and even our transportation department, so that we can reach all corners of the district. Our community school coordinators are the ones that operate the pantries in the schools. They're the ones that do the ordering, they do the marketing, and then have those open hours. There's lots of different schedules. We've been very intentional with time. You know, it takes a lot to run a pantry. So we've kind of rolled back a little bit of the hours and the dates to try and be more strategic of what our open hours are, to make sure that families have the ability to access different pantries in their neighborhoods at different times. So that's been one of our big changes for this year that's been very positive. And then that allows us to add hours as needs arise or as needs drop in a specific area for whatever reason. So it's open to everybody within that school or within the neighborhood to be able to access. So it's been a really great resource.
So do you see a lot of families popping in together when they're picking students up or dropping students off, or high school students popping in on their way in and out of class, or what are you typically seeing?
Right. So for our younger kids in the elementary, we try and schedule the open hours in the morning or afternoon at drop-off. Mm-hmm. Parents are already accessing school and they're making that trip, or they're walking and picking up their child. So they're already there. So it's a safe environment for them to come in and actually access the resources that they need, kind of the here and now. It's kind of built to be that one-stop shop to make sure that you're getting what you need when you need it.
And these all popped up pretty quickly, right? I mean, to go from just a few pantries to almost every school and every preschool, that's a big deal.
It is. I was the first pantry, actually, back in the day for the schools with the food bank when it was Scavo High School. Okay. Since then, we've added probably 5 or 10, within that first few years. And then during COVID and after, we've ramped it up and made sure that we had access for all families in all of those schools.
And how does having the pantries in the schools connect to better classroom learning?
Oh my goodness. If a kid has not eaten, they are not going to be in their seat ready to learn. It's hard to focus. We all know what it's like to be hangry. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very real thing. And kids come to school if they haven't eaten. It's hard to sit. It's hard to pay attention and learn.
And is there any stigma that you're seeing with families that use the school pantries?
Not really. I think our schools have built an environment that is very safe and nurturing, and they've worked really hard to develop that level of trust with families. So families are coming in and needing the resource. Sometimes it does happen where a family might be uncomfortable or apprehensive, but usually after some conversation and they see everybody else is doing it too, it makes it a lot easier. We've recently opened it for staff as well, which is a little bit more of a stigma. it's hard to know that you're working full time and still need that support. So we have made, concessions for them to be able to access a little bit more confidentially. And that's flourished very much the last couple months.
Feels like a little bit safer of a space than going into a foreign food pantry that you've never been to before, too, if it's a place you're used to coming and going and you know folks. Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Melissa, your organization helps connect families to resources year-round. Tell us more, number one, about Waypoint, but also what challenges do families face once school is out? What are you seeing?
Yeah. Well, Waypoint Resources, we number one reason why people come to us is for that immediate need of food. But we also have on site a clothing closet for kiddos, a free health clinic on site as well, a community garden. We're really blessed with our own client navigator as well that can help families who need more than food, access to other resources, and just that extra client care. But for that question about, once those kiddos are out of school, what are we seeing at our location? The need definitely goes up during the summertime. Kids are missing, they're not getting their breakfast and lunch at school. We're a food pantry that's open Monday through Thursday and every Saturday. So we have increased hours and access over the years because I really believe that you have to have access to services in order for families to be able to get the help that they need. Also, we're out in Dallas County. We're out in the rural areas. And so once school is out, there may not have a school food pantry. Where I'm at, there are not pantries within the schools, but we partner very closely with the schools and the counselors and have a great relationship and rapport with them. So when they identify a need, they can call us. We can help make that connection. We really want to be able to help the entire family. And so sometimes there is a stigma. You just talked about that a little bit, where it's just hard to ask for help. It's hard to sometimes get help from your where you see those people. And so sometimes going somewhere else to access services can be a little bit more confidential. We see that in the rural areas. We serve, the entire county of Dallas County, where we'll see a family that there may be a food pantry in their small town, in their church. However, do you want to go to the place where everybody knows your name and you have to ask for help? It's very humbling. And so being able to go to a larger town where maybe you can come in, you don't want to talk to anybody. You want to be able to come in. It's hard. It's really, really hard to access services. And so just be in an open, welcoming place where families, we can learn their name. We can learn a little bit more about them. Once they feel a little more comfortable coming in, then we can help connect them to other resources. So it really is about being there for more than food. And so wanting to help the entire family. So during the school year, we have a snack pack program. So we send weekend snack packs home through the entire school district and then across Dallas County to help those kiddos that need a little bit of extra on the weekend. And so some things that we're doing out there in that area.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, because I think I was making assumptions that, it's easier to go somewhere where but it sounds like you're meeting people where they are, right? Some people want one thing, some people might want something else, and there's lots of options in our community.
And that's what I love about the partnership with the schools. It really just takes everybody. So
yeah. Dave, we've heard that there's always been issues with food insecurity, especially with youth, but the pandemic changed the conversation. What did we learn from that period where more and more people were needing support?
Well, first and foremost, the pandemic highlighted that anyone from any walk of life could find themselves in the situation of having the crisis of food security. And it's an everyday problem. This isn't something you can push off. This is not a paycheck to paycheck thing. You have to feed your kids and your family every single day. And when the pandemic occurred, a lot of the restrictions, rules, and regulations around food delivery services were lifted. And what we found was a lot more access to mobile sites, delivery of food packages to families, just much more flexibility, because partly a lot of the population that we're talking about here may be working multiple part-time jobs, do not have flexibility to get out of work for an hour to go to a food pantry. So we have to really meet them where they are in terms of what works for them. And, spending your days in lines at an emergency food site isn't the way to do it. We learned a lot of lessons during the pandemic, and now some of that's contracting back, partly because we just had to kind of open the floodgates in terms of feeding folks. The demand was rising so high. However, now, and I think our food security partners will report that every month we're still having higher demand, record demand every month. That's part of costs, inflation, but also, the rising costs of food specifically to purchase in the grocery store. So the pandemic kind of gave us that sort of initial thoughts of what we could do and where we can go. And now we can innovate a bit in terms of access to food sites. This conversation is around, kids in schools getting access to food. And really, summer has always been that huge hurdle. From the federal level, there are summer meal sites, and a lot of that had restrictions on it that it has to be a congregate meal. Everybody has to show up at the same place, same time. In fact, you couldn't even take leftovers home with you from that site. A lot of those rules were relaxed during the pandemic and allowed sort of the innovation that we see now to just feed kids, because unless they're in the classroom during the school year, perhaps their only meal that's guaranteed would be a free and reduced price lunch. So, however we can get kids fed on a daily basis and as close to 3 squares as possible is essential.
So we've identified summer as really this critical issue. Let's talk about the state's new summer food pilot that happened last summer, Healthy Kids Iowa. Dave, what motivated the creation of this program, and tell us more about what that was and how it was different?
Sure thing. Well, as I mentioned, there's sort of a summer meal program that has always kind of existed to meet this gap. But federally, they created a program that is now called Sunbucks, or Summer EBT, in which a debit card worth $40 for each child who was eligible would be sent to families and parents to make choices in the grocery store, farmer's market, co-op, what have you, on how to feed their child that in the summer each month. Our state chose to request a waiver of that program and created Healthy Kids Iowa, which was a boxed monthly box of food with an equivalent value and nutritional content that families had to go to certain sites and pick up for their kiddos. That was administered by the food bank system across the state with the help of the pantries. And, United Way is a data-driven organization. That data about the effectiveness and impact of that program isn't yet available, but we know that as we look at that program, there are going to be ways that we can evaluate efficiency, cost sharing, and other models for delivery of that type of food. One of the things we'd like to see is empowering families to have the choice themselves, just like our pantries will have anytime pantries that folks can select items. Culturally sensitive foods as well are an issue. Do you have halal proteins or specific produce for some of our immigrant and refugee populations? These are considerations that families can make the choices of them on their own, and actually probably have access to those in other markets and bodegas even than maybe what came in that prepackaged box of food. So Healthy Kids Iowa, served quite a number of kiddos this summer. It's going to be TBD if it will be done again this next summer. So.
Melissa, your organization helped families connect with this pilot. What are some of the strengths you saw and maybe some challenges as well?
Well, we had some great positive feedback from families who received the boxes of food. And so they were a robust offering. There was a lot of fresh items in there. So it required some extra refrigeration at the food pantries. So when families came in to receive their box for their kiddos, it was a lot of food. And so we heard a lot of great feedback on that. And so some of the challenges are too, I think David mentioned because we do have a lot of cultural specific dietary needs for households. And so sometimes that, was not an available option in the prepackaged, food box. They could make some substitutions, which was fantastic. And so definitely would meet the need. But I think part of the other feedback from families was It's always just easier if you can, make your own choice too. It's certainly easier for them, transportation wise, to go to the grocery store when certainly meets their hours, whether that's, after their work hours or whatever. So I saw great things out of it. Our volunteers were so excited to be able to put the things together and have that extra special offering for the families this summer. So a lot of great positive things. But some things, communication and timing on it. I think it could be an excellent program in the future too. So,
And Lynn, how did the pilot overlap with the needs that you're seeing in Des Moines Public Schools?
We had summer lunch programs last summer.
Okay.
So we were not allowed to have a Healthy Kids site at a food distribution or lunch site. So those couldn't commingle. So it was hard for us to be able to get the food to the families that need it. Usually if families are coming for school or for that school lunch in the summer, they're the ones that really need that summer bulk. So it was hard to do that. With our staffing, they were working during the day, which oftentimes was not, an effective time for parents to come and pick up a box. We did have a lot of families that benefited from the products. But if you have a large family and you're going to carry this home because you don't have a car, that made it really difficult to be able to get to and from.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's TBD, but if Healthy Kids Iowa continues next year, are there any other improvements? Dave's mentioned a few with choice and culturally sensitive foods. Anything else you want to see looked at that? I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? Or any ways that you want to see that expanded? Anything else you want to add on that, any of the three of you?
I would jump in that, whenever, first and foremost, planning in advance. Our banks and pantries work on fiscal year cycles. I hate to say it, the school year will approach faster than budgets and planning for our nonprofit food security system can allow. An increase in resources and administrative costs for the food banks and the pantries. They absorbed a lot of staff costs, new trucks, new refrigeration, all things that weren't built into the pilot that ended up costing our food security system. But again, getting more food out to the kiddos is incredibly important. And so there's tweaks and things we need to see. Again, the data is still out in how many people we actually served. But I think it also opens the conversation of what other models would better, more efficiently serve kiddos, and really kind of blend those ideas as opposed to, it's a pilot. We're supposed to pilot and try things out and learn from that and grow.
Yeah. I'd like to just echo a little bit of that too. And I think that it's a pretty heavy lift for some food pantries and access and transportation. Again, I'll reference the rural areas, and you talked about having to carry. But it's a robust, like I said, a lot of amazing months worth of food to be able to take home, and a month's worth of fresh doesn't last a month either. And so there's that challenge too. So when we're talking about those rural areas and where are they going to access, a food box for their household, where are they going to pick that up at? And so communication, having the resources available, timing, because it takes, a food pantry that's running on, volunteers. We had a volunteer that spent her entire summer there every single day, just packing packing the Healthy Kids Iowa pack. Loved it, and it's just so, our volunteers get so much out of it, being able to serve our kiddos in that way. And so our heart definitely goes out for them. And so anything that we can do to get that food to the kids who need it the most, we all want to jump in and do our very best for it. And so, I'm hoping that program will continue to grow and really meet that immediate need that each family needs uniquely.
Yeah, I just hope that we can get the food to a place where families are already going. So if they are going to school, fantastic. That's where the pantry should be. If it's a different location, then we should look at that. And being able to allow the flexibility. Like, we could only do the daytime hours because that's when our staff were available to run those pantries. So being able to do nighttime or evening hours is going to be really important to meet families where they're at, because they're working several jobs sometimes, and it's not always 8 to 5.
Yeah. Well, we'll stay tuned on that topic. Dave, we've talked a lot about meeting kids' needs, but there is a broader economic argument for investing in child nutrition and food security. Can you speak to that? And I'm sure infuse some data knowledge that I'm sure you
Absolutely.
have there as
Absolutely.
well.
Something that hasn't come up in this conversation is SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which, when we're talking about emergency food delivery, the scale and scope of SNAP cannot be matched. In the emergency food system, you're providing 3 days of food, and then that individual or family, what do they do the rest of the month? For every one meal that the emergency food system provides, SNAP provides 9. And why I bring this up is that over 60,000 central Iowans rely on SNAP on a monthly basis, of which 40% are kiddos. So SNAP is sort of the base of all this. But when it comes to childhood nutrition, United Way really cares about early childhood. It's critically important time for brain development, and having that steady, solid nutrition is really setting up that kid biologically for success for life. Some of that brain growth occurs in the first 0 to 5 years of life, and then it's done. So if they have a poor nutrition, limited access, we're stunting our learner, we're stunting our future worker. And the thing is, it's already been mentioned, a hungry kid is not ready to learn. They're not sitting still in the classroom. They may have behavioral issues. They're not learning. And from our perspective here at United Way, we look at things of a cradle to career. Preschool may seem like learning your ABCs and blocks and colors, but that's the first step in a workforce development solution of your workforce for the next 15, 20 years. So, really that's the focus, is getting just at least those earliest kiddos good solid nutrition on a regular basis, and take that pressure off the family too, because these are all integrated issues. A family that is struggling to feed their child is likely feeling incredible stress in many other areas of their life. Just could imagine if you woke up in the morning and your kid is hungry and there's no food in the pantry or the refrigerator, what that would do to a parent. And that extends to their work output and their other bills and their other obligations as well. So, taking some of this pressure off of needy families in our community and folks who may find themselves through one emergency or issue to fall into this space is incredibly important. But I've got to go back to that nutrition. Brain health is incredibly important, and our kiddo is just not ready to learn if they're sitting in that classroom hungry.
Yeah. And Lynn, how does that play out in the school day? I mean, there's some obvious answers there, but what do you see?
Yeah, I think a lot of things that we see are the kids that aren't ready to learn. We see behaviors start to exhibit themselves in the classroom. Kids can't concentrate and focus. I think a lot of that then leads to attendance issues. Kids that don't have food tend to have higher levels of health issues. So then we have a whole nother host of things that are keeping kids outside of school, kind of that push-pull kind of model. Makes it really hard for them to function.
We've been focused on the kids here, but Melissa, how does that impact the rest of the family?
Well, it starts with the kids. I think, what dad, caregiver does not want to take care of their kids first. And so, we have just reminded me that I was helping a client out the other day and had a couple of little kids with her. And the little one was talking about, Mom, I need snacks for school. I need snacks for school. The little kid was just adamant. I kept saying over and over, like, I was hoping that they got snacks for school that day while they were in the food pantry. So I don't know if it was their treat day or if it was a birthday, but what a worry. And I could hear the mom was saying, we'll get you some snacks. We'll get you some snacks. So I don't know how she was if she was tackling that there, but we just hear those stories from those families when they come in. Where they're just really just trying to make ends meet. And so, like I mentioned earlier, the number one price people come to us is for that immediate need of food, but it trickles down to all aspects of life. During, the holiday seasons and school's out, it's a natural stressful time where anxieties are high, life is happening. You have families that are struggling to put gas in the car, or they're having to make the choices of paying rent or not paying their utilities on time. And so that added, layer of being able to feed your kids, let alone a healthy and nutritious meal that cost a lot more money out of their standard pocket, cuts out of their budget. And so they're making sacrifices and they're making changes all the time. I had a mom who recently mentioned oatmeal packets. They come in the little, single serve oatmeal packet. She was having only a half a packet of oatmeal in the morning for herself, and then would eat the other half the next day so that she would have some for the kiddos. Just, we put oatmeal in our little snack packs that go home. Sometimes we'll put 2 or 3 of them in there, just based on that story. Families are making hard choices, and that's how it's affecting them. So.
We're going to end with a question that we've been asking at the end of each episode, and it's my favorite because I like to leave with a little inspiration. What gives you hope when it comes to ensuring Iowa's children aren't hungry? What gives you hope? And we'll go right down the line. We'll go Lyn, Melissa, Dave.
I think the big thing that gives me hope is our community and how well we work together and come together to solve problems and to really impact kids. Not that everybody else doesn't care in our community, but our partners are fantastic and our community supports us every day.
Yes, I will fall back on those neighbors helping neighbors. I know it's cliche to say that, but when there is a shutdown, a SNAP delay, an emergency, our community steps up. And so when a cart of groceries goes out for a family, 2 carts of donations come back in. And so that's where I see the hope, and that there is some great creativity that comes out of collaboration. And when we are all working together to serve that immediate need, it can happen, and we get better at it, and there's just greatness in it. And so I'm super, super excited about our neighbors helping neighbors. So
that's the part that makes me emotional.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Bring us home.
I have to say that I think a lot of the stigma around food insecurity is being lessened as our community recognizes the awareness of what their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers, their employees are experiencing. And just like they said, as that awareness rises, people are giving of their time, donating, volunteering, with compassion and without that judgment. And that's really the key. Any of us can find ourselves in this situation. And just that little hand up and help can really pull a family out of financial turmoil and the spiraling out that can go with it. And again, this is an everyday problem. Every day you wake up hungry. Every day that kiddo wakes up hungry. And so really, again, the power of our community recognizing the problem and stepping up to try and meet that need. Now, we have to address that need continues to grow.
We're all lucky we live in a pretty amazing place where people step up when needed, collaborate to make things better. And those answers help give me hope too for where we're moving forward on this important topic. So thank you to all 3 of you for being here, and just the work you do every single day to make sure Iowa's kids are nourished, healthy, and ready to learn. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Listeners, if you'd like to learn more about how to get involved, we need more people to step up. And I know you're up for it. Volunteer, give, advocate for change. Learn more at unitedwaydm.org/food. So next time, we'll be starting a new series about housing and homelessness in Central Iowa. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being dedicated to making our community a better place. I look forward to our future conversations.